Alright, boys and girls, this is going to help a little bit with Chapter 4.5. Chapter 5.4. Part of Chapter 5.4 was being able to take a situation, a real-life problem, and then be able to turn it into slope-intercept form. And we learned that slope-intercept form was y equals mx plus b. When an equation is solved for y, we know that m is the slope, we know b is the y-intercept. So here's a situation where you would have to take an equation and turn it into take a situation and turn it into an equation. So Mr. Katz has counted because he is very concerned about his looks. He always continues to count the amount of hair he has on his head, and he's done that for a couple of years, ever since he was 21. And so he started making a chart, and he noticed it one day, and he said that 5 years after 21, 7 years, 9 years, and 11 years after 21, he counted the strands of hair. And again, these are lower numbers, but just for the point of the problem, we'll pretend that these are accurate numbers for what I have on my head. And there's a lot of reasons for why it looks like there's a decrease in that. I mean, the Yankees have been losing. Miss Kellerman's very stressful. There's a lot of reasons why I'm losing that hair. But so we look at this, and the first thing that we have to know is that this is a linear relationship, because the numbers at the top are going up or down by a constant amount, same amount every time, and these are going up or down by a constant amount. First thing we have to do is figure out which one of these is our x and which one of these is our y. Well, which one is going to depend on the other? And if you thought about it, the amount of hair is going to depend on the number of years. You can see as the years go up, the hair is going to go down because of the stress. So whatever is depending on the other, that's going to be our y. And on the bottom, the years are going to be our x. That's going to help us because the first thing we need to do is we need to pick any 2 points. It doesn't matter. I'm going to pick these 2 points. They seem like lower numbers than the rest of them. At least the y's do. And any 2 points we pick, we're going to first find the slope. And remember, the slope is the change of the y over the change of the x. So here we have, I'm going to start with this point right here. So one of our points is 9, 800. The other point is 11, 600. So I'm going to say the change of y would be 800 minus 600 over, and then if I start at the 800, I got to start at the 9. 9 minus 11. And when I simplify that down, I get a positive 200 over a negative 2. And that ends up being, if I actually do the division, it comes out to a perfect negative 100. Well, that means our slope's negative 100. Remember, that's the rate of change. That means that for every 1x, x is the year, so for every 1 year, my amount of hair I'm losing is 100. And notice I said losing because it's negative 100. So now we can actually put that into our equation. Instead of y equals mx plus b, I know the m is 100. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, because there are 3 variables left, a y, an x, and a b. And I know to write an equation, I need to leave x and y as x and y. And all I need to do is figure out what the m and the b are. Well, none of these points tell me when x is 100, when x is 0, what y is. So what I can do is I can plug in either one of any point here. And I'm going to pick the 800 and the 9. It doesn't matter that you could have picked any of these. And I'm going to plug them in. So I know when y was 800, I know my slope stays as negative 100. My x was 9. And notice I filled in all the information except for b. So this is going to help us because if I simplify this, 9 times negative 100 plus b equals 800. And then what I can do is I can add 900 to both sides, and I'm going to be left with b equals, which is what we were trying to find. Add 900 to both sides, so it's going to be 800 plus 900, and that equals 1700. Well, now I can write my equation. Y equals negative 100x plus 1700. And if you think about what this means that the y-intercept, when x was 0, when the number of years were 0, so in this case, since I was counting since 21, that was when I was 21. I had this much hair. But I'm losing it at a pace or a rate of negative 100 per year. So now you can use this equation to solve anything. I could figure out how much hair I'm going to have in 20 years after 21. I could find out if I gave you the amount of hair. You could plug it in for y and figure out how many years have passed. So that's how you make an equation. The other thing, so when you're given a graph like this, and you're given a line, and you're asked to make an equation, but you don't necessarily, for some reason, if this point right here was like in between two of the lines, you wouldn't necessarily know what the b is. So what you would have to do is you would take two of the points on the graph that you do see and that you do know. So say this point was 319, and this point over here was 7, 25. I just made those points up. But let's just pretend for a second that those were the points. Well, you can do exactly what we did in the last problem. You could first find the slope. So to find the slope, the change of the y, so 19 minus 25 over 3 minus 7. And you get 19 minus 25 is, negative 6. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. So you're going to leave it as a fraction, but we can reduce negative 6 over negative 4 to positive 3 over 2. So now I know y equals positive 3 over 2x plus b. So we're going to do what we did before. We could take any one of our points. So I'm going to take the 3 and the 19 and plug it into our the y and the x, because I know they go together. And notice I'm going to write 3 over 1 so I could multiply the fractions together really easily, plus b. So I end up getting 3 times 3 is 9, 2 times 1 is 2, so 9 over 2 plus b equals 19. Since 9 over 2 is the same as 4.5, it's going to, you can either leave your b as a decimal or a fraction, it doesn't matter. But since 4.5 is a pretty round number, I'm going to subtract 4.5 on both sides, which would cancel it out on this side. And 19 minus 4.5 is 14.5. And that's my b. So now I can write my equation. Y equals my slope, 3 over 2x, plus, because it's a positive, 14.5. Now some teachers will insist that if your slope is a fraction, you should make your b as a fraction, and if they do that, you could just put 9 over 2 instead of 14.5. I'm sorry, not 9 over 2. 14.5, would be, so 14.5, you would multiply 2 times 14, 28 plus 1, so you get 29 over 2 if you change that mixed number into an improper fraction. So if you wanted to, you could have left it at 29 over 2. And that's how you take a graph and change it into an equation.